Mandibular angle. The mandibular angle is promoted in martial arts folklore as a knockout switch. A light thumb press under the jaw supposedly shuts off the brain. Anatomically, the point targets the mandibular branch of the trigeminal nerve where it wraps around the jawbone. Striking it definitely creates sharp pain, which is why it shows up in police pain compliance training. But that pain does not translate into instant incapacitation during real resistance. In a live fight, hitting this point requires precision on a constantly moving target. The nerve is protected by muscle tension, the shoulder line, and a raised guard. Even if you land clean contact, the most common result is a flinch response, not a collapse. Pain without structural disruption rarely ends a fight because adrenaline overrides sensation, and the opponent keeps swinging. This pressure point only works on compliant partners who aren't striking back. In practical combat, it has no reliable stopping power, no knockout mechanism, and zero value unless the attacker already has dominant control. The mandibular angle is a pain point, not a fight-ending technique. Hypoglossal nerve. The hypoglossal nerve is often advertised as a secret under-the-jaw pressure point that drops people instantly. In anatomy terms, this nerve controls tongue movement and runs deep under the mandible, protected by tissue, muscle, and a natural defensive posture. In reality, pressing it with a thumb in a fight is almost impossible unless the opponent is already restrained and not throwing punches. The technique shows up in law enforcement training as a pain compliance tool. Forceful thumb pressure under the jaw creates discomfort and can drive the head backward. But this only works because the subject is controlled, not because the nerve shuts down the body. In a fight with adrenaline and motion, the jaw muscles clench, the chin tucks, and the target disappears behind guard positions. The real effect is sharp pain and annoyance, not incapacitation. It does not cause unconsciousness, motor shutdown, or structural failure that ends a fight. On a resisting opponent, the hypoglossal pressure point has near zero practical value. It's another textbook point that exists on diagrams, not in live combat. Ulnar nerve. The ulnar nerve is the classic funny bone spot on the elbow, and a lot of pressure point systems claim you can hit it to disable an opponent's arm. Anatomically, the nerve runs in a shallow groove behind the elbow joint, which is why accidental impact creates a shock sensation down the forearm. But that reaction doesn't equal loss of function in a fight. It's a pain signal, not a switch that shuts down the limb. In real combat, the elbow is one of the hardest places to target with precision. People don't stand still with their arm extended, and the nerve is protected by guard position, clothing, and constant motion. Even if you land a perfect strike, adrenaline dampens the reaction. The arm might feel numb for a second, but punches still come and the grip doesn't instantly fail. Any disruption you get from the ulnar nerve is brief and inconsistent, and it only shows up cleanly in controlled drills where both partners already know what's happening. As a pressure point, it doesn't create structural damage, doesn't force a fight to end, and has no reliable tactical value unless the opponent is already neutralized. Radial nerve. The radial nerve runs along the back of the forearm and controls wrist and finger extension, which leads to the myth that a tap to the forearm can make someone drop whatever they're holding or shut the arm down. In anatomy terms, the nerve is buried under muscle and fascia for most of its length and only becomes exposed in narrow moving windows, not in the clean, static angles shown in pressure point diagrams. The sensation people know from nerve strikes usually comes from hitting the muscle belly hard, not precise contact with the nerve itself. In sparring or real violence, arms are flexed, muscles tense, and the radius rotates constantly, making the target unpredictable and effectively shielded. Striking it lightly has no effect, and even with force, the result is pain, not paralysis. Under adrenaline, the pain signal is suppressed, and the opponent keeps moving. You don't get guaranteed grip failure, weapon drop, or motor shutdown unless the limb is already compromised. Any disruption requires brute force, like a heavy low kick equivalent to the arm, not a fingertip poke. That makes the radial nerve a pain point at best, not a functional fight ender. Suprascapular nerve. The suprascapular nerve runs through a notch behind the collarbone and controls major shoulder muscles, including the supraspinatus and infraspinatus. Striking this area with real force, typically a downward hammer fist or elbow, can stun the shoulder and cause immediate loss of arm mobility. This isn't a gentle pressure point. It's a force-based mechanical shutdown from nerve trauma and muscular spasm. The effect is similar to the dead shoulder reaction seen in rugby collisions. The arm drops, range of motion disappears, and the fighter can't lift or rotate the limb. In combat sports, it's rarely used as a targeted technique because it requires a clean angle and a committed strike, not a small poke. Under the right conditions, close range, clinch breaks, or surprise angles, it can end an exchange instantly by removing one side of the offense. The limitation is accuracy and timing. The nerve sits under muscle and bone, so you need impact, not precision. Skilled fighters protect this zone naturally by tucking their shoulders and keeping the collarbone covered. When it lands, though, the suprascapular shot is one of the few pressure points that can actually change the course of a fight in a single moment, but only through real power, not anatomical trickery. Peroneal nerve. The peroneal nerve wraps around the fibular head on the outside of the thigh and controls the muscles responsible for lifting and stabilizing the foot. When this nerve is hit with real force, it creates a sharp electric pain and a sudden loss of leg control. The classic dead leg. Fighters drop weight on the wrong side, the knee buckles, and the base collapses. This is one of the few pressure points that can end a fight instantly, but only when treated like a true strike, not a fingertip technique. Practically, the peroneal nerve is the target behind Muay Thai low kicks. The reason those kicks can shut a fighter down isn't mysticism. It's nerve trauma disrupting the motor function of the leg. A knee strike, shin kick, or even a well-timed stomp to the outside thigh creates both nerve shock and damage to supporting tissue, leaving the opponent unable to drive power through that side. The limitation is simple. It demands accuracy plus force. Tapping the nerve does nothing, and a sloppy kick only hits muscle. Under adrenaline, minor pain is ignored, but a clean, heavy shot produces immediate mechanical failure. In real combat, the peroneal nerve isn't a pressure point in the traditional sense. It's a target for power strikes that can end the exchange by removing the opponent's ability to stand. Tibial nerve. The tibial nerve runs down the back of the lower leg, behind the calf muscles, and branches into the nerves that control foot stability and ankle strength. Unlike the peroneal nerve, which sits close to bone, the tibial nerve is cushioned by soft tissue, so it can't be pressed to create a reaction. To make it work in a real fight, you need impact, usually through a stomp to the back of the leg, a low kick behind the knee, or a heel kick when the opponent steps forward. When struck with force, the tibial nerve produces sharp pain, loss of balance, and sudden instability in the ankle. Fighters feel their foot give out, which disrupts forward pressure and forces them to shift weight onto the opposite side. In practical terms, this can break posture, stop a rush, or create an opening for a takedown. It's the same mechanism behind calf kicks in MMA, not a mystical shutdown, but nerve trauma combined with mechanical disruption. The downside is reliability. Because the nerve is deeper, accuracy alone isn't enough. You need a strong strike and the right timing, usually when the opponent is stepping or loading weight. Under adrenaline, light contact is ignored, and only a committed shot makes a difference. That puts the tibial nerve in the sometimes works tier, effective with technique and power, useless as a small point pressure trick. Solar plexus. The solar plexus isn't a nerve on the skin, it's the celiac plexus, a bundle of autonomic nerves located behind the upper abdominal wall just below the sternum. When struck with force, the impact causes a reflexive diaphragm spasm that shuts down breathing for several seconds. This is why a clean shot to the solar plexus can end a fight instantly without a knockout. The opponent can't inhale, loses posture, and enters panic response. The effect isn't psychological, it's mechanical. The diaphragm contracts involuntarily, the body folds, and protective reflexes take over. Boxers, Muay Thai fighters, and karate practitioners all target this zone deliberately because it works consistently against resisting opponents. A well-timed body shot, knee, or straight punch can drop someone regardless of size difference, making it one of the most reliable pressure points in real combat. Unlike most pressure point concepts, the solar plexus requires impact, not precision poking. It's a proven target in full-contact sports and self-defense because it disrupts automatic functions, not pain tolerance. The technique demands good timing and clean mechanics, but when executed properly, it remains one of the few anatomical targets that consistently changes the outcome of a fight through pure physiology. Brachial plexus. The brachial plexus is a cluster of major nerves that exit the spine at the neck and control the shoulder, arm, and part of the chest. It sits behind the sternocleidomastoid muscle just above the collarbone, and unlike most pressure points, a clean strike to this region can produce real neurological shock. A hard elbow, palm heel, or forearm strike to the side of the neck can disrupt posture, weaken the arm, and trigger a brief blackout response from the sudden overload to the nervous system. The reason it works isn't mystical. It's neurophysiology. Striking the brachial plexus creates both pain and involuntary motor disruption. Fighters feel their legs wobble, their vision narrow, and their arms stop responding. The same reaction you see when someone gets clipped behind the ear or dropped by a short hook to the neck. Law enforcement and military combatives use this area because it creates functional interruption, not just discomfort. However, the technique requires force and accuracy. You're targeting a nerve bundle protected by muscle and movement, so casual pressure has no effect. But when delivered with committed power, especially in close range, the brachial plexus is one of the few anatomical targets that reliably changes a fight, causing disorientation and loss of control even without a knockout. Carotid sinus. The carotid sinus is not a pressure point in the traditional martial arts sense. It's a baroreceptor located on the carotid artery that regulates blood pressure. When struck or compressed with force, it can trigger a reflex called vasovagal response, causing the heart rate to crash, blood pressure to drop, and the brain to lose blood supply. In controlled environments like judo chokes, this reaction is used for safe submission. Outside of controlled conditions, it can be medically dangerous or fatal. The anatomy explains why. Pressing the carotid sinus signals the brain that blood pressure is too high. The body compensates instantly by dilating vessels and slowing the heart. A protective mechanism in normal physiology, but catastrophic when activated by blunt force. In rare cases, this can cause sudden collapse, arrhythmia, or cardiac arrest. Unlike pain-based pressure points, this is a cardiovascular reflex, not a pain reaction. For that reason, it has no place as a casual self-defense trick. Striking the carotid region requires brute force and precise timing, and the outcome is unpredictable. In sport combat, referees stop chokes to prevent prolonged compression. In real violence, there is no safety buffer. This is the only target on the list where the risk is not exaggerated. Misuse can lead to serious injury or death. It's a clinical emergency, not a tactical shortcut.